Hello, good morning. Welcome, everyone. We're having a very special talk today with a very special guest. And yeah, I've seen your questions coming. Now, let me just first tell you what the topic is in case you didn't know yet. I'm sure you all do know. And it's if you're watching the recording, you see the title. It's all about female desire, which is a really important topic. Why I'm personally passionate about this in my work. As the founder of Reclaim Womanhood, so we're going to talk about female desire, even though desire does, we can obviously talk about both genders and see how the conversation goes. But we're talking to women who want to reclaim this for themselves because desire is so much more than just the bedroom, right? It's really how alive we feel. It's how much like how we just go about our day-to-day lives, and everything in the bedroom is reflected out to the bedroom and vice versa. So we're gonna get into a lot of these topics, and many of you have sent in questions. We'll get to them. You can also pop in questions if you're live on the chat, and yeah, we'll go through this topic and where it takes us. So let me introduce Pamela Klein, who is a certified sex therapist and deals with us a lot in clinic and practice. And we're kind of blending, we each have different angles we're coming at with this work and see different things in our practice. I'm a fertility awareness educator and a college teacher, and yeah, this work is very much needed in all the different ways it plays out and all the different ways we support women. And we're ready to dive right in. How about
Yeah,
each
I'm
of
just
you
I'm
take
going to
it?
define for everyone what a sex therapist is so people know what I do,
So
right?
go for
Yes,
it. I'm
yes,
giving you
yes.
the
Okay,
floor,
great,
please.
great. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Yes, I'm a certified sex therapist. I also do, couples work because they go hand in hand, right? So I'm a therapist that basically specializes in the area of intimacy. I deal with all different kinds of sexual dysfunction, couples that are stuck, women that are stuck in terms of somewhere in the cycle, right? They're getting stuck in the sexual cycle around a lot of times the desire issues, arousal issues, right? All different kinds of things, pain, right? Discrepancies in what they need as a couple. So I really, deal with many different couples and women in terms of, whatever they're struggling, as a clinical, social worker. So that's why we're coming from different angles, but at the same time, it all ends up, coming together, right? And we always need the resources of, college teachers and other, obviously professionals to work together. And, that's something that we figured we can give you a full perspective on desire and where people might be getting stuck and how to work on it.
Yeah, thank you. So we're coming at the angle, and again, this is going to go in many different directions. We'll go wherever it
Yeah.
flows, really being in the flow with this.
Yeah.
But we'll come from the angle because my work is around cycles and hormones and things like that. We'll come from that perspective, but you'll see it's so much broader than you think. So in terms of the cycle, why I devoted my entire career to the cycle is because first of all, it's not just about the actual menstrual cycle. Women are cyclical. We move through cycles, even if it's pregnancy, postpartum, birth itself is a cycle, all the different stages we move through. And the life cycle, there's like once you get into the cyclical perspective, you see it everywhere.
Mm.
But yeah, there should be a calling number in the same email that you got the link from. So in terms of coming into this work, from from the hormonal perspective is one piece, but also the cycle itself is really the self intimacy piece, right? Like when we come into the topic of intimacy, a lot of it is first, how much are we building intimacy inside of ourselves? How much are we really knowing ourselves? And that reflects so much in relationships. Like
Right.
the effects I'm seeing from my work, even though I don't work specifically with couples or relationships, I mean, it comes in here and there, but it's how a woman builds herself, how a woman really knows herself. And it's like that just has ripple effects all over the place.
Yeah.
So we're coming from the perspective of how are you building desire within yourself, and what kind of conditions maybe need to be met, or what's holding it back in different ways. So yeah, like we can start from the hormonal perspective, just in terms of how the cycle supports desire, how naturally speaking a woman is actually built with desire. Desire is literally such a feminine essence, right?
Yeah.
And then we can go into like what you see, what's holding people back, what's blocking, and different things like that.
Right. I think we should first, I actually think it's important to define like the word desire, right?
Yeah,
I think
go
people
for it. Take it away.
people
Yeah,
intertwine it with the word libido and then there's the word arousal and like a
yeah.
lot of times people don't really have the definition straight, right? So when
Hmm.
like at least when I'm referring to desire, right, it's really like that mental anticipation, that looking forward. It's what people usually refer to as being in the mood, right?
Right.
Like I'm in the mood, I'm not in the mood, I'm not in the mood for this kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
That's really what clinically, the definition of sexual desire is, right? Is about, am I, in the mood for this? Am I thinking about it? Am I looking forward to it? Right? Which most people want to have if they're going to be right working towards that, right? They want to feel, like you say, that aliveness, that feeling, that excitement for something they're going to do, right? Arousal is the actual physical response that comes along with it. So that could be affected. Hormones could affect both pieces, right? They can affect both desire and arousal, right? But I think it's important to define what we're talking about when we're talking about desire, right? It's really more of that mental anticipation for it.
Right. And arousal is more like the physical, like how your body actually
Manifestation.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some
So
people can have desire and not have arousal. They can have arousal, not have
exactly.
desire, or they can both not be there, or they can both be there, right, and working well, right? So ideally, we want to see that we can cultivate both of them, right?
100%. Yeah. So, let's start with first what you see. Like, what do you see people struggle with? And then we'll move into like what's normal, what's natural, and how do you solve, different problems that come up.
Yeah, yeah. So the number one thing that comes into my office, right, and people are struggling with is what we refer to as low desire, or someone would refer to it that way. Now, obviously, that's a relative term because what's low compared to what, right? But a lot of
Mhm.
times it's lower than they would want, lower than their spouse, right? It feels like it's not there at all in some sort of way, right? So most of the time, the issue that people are coming in with is either desire discrepancy, so they're very different than their spouse, or
Mhm.
I really just don't feel like I have this like aliveness in me. I don't feel like I have this excitement, this looking forward. It's just like something that sort of feel like I have to do, or I end up doing. And even if they do have arousal, which very often, I mean, not always, right, but it very often is the case, they're still missing this piece of like the anticipation, the looking forward to it, right? So it's something that there are cases also where the arousal is also missing, which is even harder, right? It's like I wasn't looking forward to this and I don't even feel pleasure with it, right? So that's even obviously a harder position to be in. But the most common issue is typically, I'm not feeling the desire I want to feel, for something I'm going to be engaging in, right?
Right. But we define desire, we define arousal, but I don't think we set a definition for libido. How would you define libido?
Well, so libido is usually changed with the word desire. Most of the time, people are using it with that. Sometimes they use it for arousal. I think I actually don't use the word libido very often because I think
Okay.
it's less of a clinical term, right? But
Hmm.
sometimes people will use it for the word of the drive, which
Hmm.
typically people are usually more talking about the desire piece when it comes to that. People are saying I have low libido. They're usually referring to I don't feel the energy or the drive for this.
Okay. I see it differently. I could say what like when I talk about desire, sorry, when I talk about libido, I am thinking more of not the physical arousal, but the more like you were saying, the drive of, and that takes us to the hormones, where we do
Right.
have hormonal activity that brings us to a certain place where we do feel that desire, I guess, that desire for togetherness, but it's it is an instinctual drive. It is something that we feel as women when we're connected, when we have
Hmm.
the you know what this is my what I teach. I'll talk a little bit, and you can also talk about this probably, but like the hormonal pattern, the hormonal cycle of how this works. So women are cyclical, men are like the sun, women are like the moon.
Right.
This works across the board with so many things. It works with fertility, right? We're only fertile about 5 to 7 days every cycle. Men are always fertile. I mean, depending if everything's working properly. It works in terms of desire and libido. We have to really differentiate. Desire is more like you were saying before, this aliveness, this excitement, this this like we said, it's so much more than the bedroom. It's how alive are you feeling in general, and that reflects so much because
Hmm.
sexuality is a life force, right? It's like how alive are
100%.
you feeling that it's reflecting in that. Libido is again more constant for men, and again, we're talking in very general terms. Everyone has different experiences, but it's more libido is more constant for men because men are producing testosterone daily. So the
Right.
male hormone for libido is testosterone. Female hormone is also testosterone, but testosterone peaks around ovulation for women, right?
That's
And
how
there's
they feel.
another female hormone, estrogen, which brings a lot of that higher energy, a lot of that. It also supports fertility. It also supports energy. Like if you after your period, you might feel more energized than before because you're
Hmm.
entering your estrogen stage, and it does very much affect libido as well. Like so many women will find if you tune into your cycle and you connect, wait, I do feel different after my period than before my next period. Like
Yeah.
around the middle of the cycle, then towards the end of the cycle, like I feel different. And it is because your hormonal activity is literally like our hormones flow in a wave.
Yeah.
So it rises and then it falls. So if you feel a drop after ovulation, you're not going crazy. That's an actual physical drop that we feel.
Yeah. Like a
It
lot of
doesn't
women will say that, right? Like they feel like even before going to the mikvah, they have this like energy, right? And then it's still like
exactly right
so
because it's
quickly appears.
rising. It is rising, and it's
Yeah.
also I think we should say this about female. in general, the female system in general, it's gradual, right? We're
Right.
not just like a
Right.
light switch, like,
Right.
oh, boom, you're here. It's a buildup, and that's how our hormones work as well. So I just want to say it's not to say that you're only going to have libido in these few days of the cycle. Like
Right.
it's not that it disappears. It's
Easier to
just that
access. Yeah. Yeah.
right. It's just it's different. Like we have different phases of the cycle. We show up differently. It's not that we're not the same every day. Women are like the moon. Like the moon literally has different phases every day. Like we show up differently.
But it's still
Women
there.
but it's
Right.
still there, and you can also, but
Yeah.
when you know where you are, you also can know, okay, so this is where I'm at today hormonally, physiologically, and also, how can I support whatever wants to come through exactly.
Right. I think people sometimes get stuck on that, like, oh, it's gone, right? Like,
No.
like it's all used up, right? Like it's all right. Like as if it can't be accessed, right? Like I think right, it's the understanding of like you're not going crazy, that it's definitely more there, right, during that, the initial time period, right? Like around ovulation, right? And then it does, right? Most people will describe that, right? If they have like a typical sort of cycle, right, they will describe that sort of like they feel like coming back from the mikvah, they definitely feel this energy more and this like life force more, right? And then it does go, sort of gradually go down, but it's not that it's not possible or it's non-existent, right, during that time
It's
period.
also a different need for connection. I just saw someone explain this in such simple like baby terms of like what each hormone does in different phases of the cycle. It's like estrogen has one thing, make baby. Progesterone has one thing, protect baby. So whatever happens in each phase, it's like, okay, here we are taking risk. Here we are feeling more like out there. Here we are, whatever it is. And here it's like, no, we have to like, cozy in, settle in. We have to like,
Yeah,
take
yeah,
care of ourselves more. It's literally like that's how biologically the body works, regardless of whether you're in a stage where you're, looking to get
right,
pregnant or not. Like on a
right.
body level, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also mentioned before, it's true. Like it's not, I don't really view like sex as something totally separate from everything else that's
Right.
going on, right? So it's like, right, it's sort of reflective of the rest of your system, the rest of your, right, the way that you're operating in general. Like sometimes people come to me and they're like, or like the issue, the symptom is about, right, about sex, right? I'm like, no, it may just be like a larger, broader piece of like, how are you, right, feeling in general? How is your energy levels in general, right? Like it's just another symptom of what might be going
Right.
on.
And I'm sure it's not
Right.
always the first thing that comes up. You might be working with someone for a while and then, oh, then that comes to the conversation and it
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe is also connected to so many other things coming up from
Well,
before.
that's where, I mean, generally when I'm working with someone, right, we sort of try to view it from a more holistic perspective, right?
Right.
Yes, you're coming to someone who specializes in this, right? But it's really about like, can we look at your, and they're sometimes confused by that. Like, why are we talking about other things, right? Other pieces of my life, my other types of health and mental health and relationships and everything else and all the other external things going on? Because it's hardly ever like, it's just about this and this is the only thing that's going on, right? So when someone's struggling with low desire, typically there's a bigger picture than just it's just about the sexual experience, right?
Right. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the holistic perspective, the
Yeah.
different factors, and like when someone comes to you
Yeah.
with low desire or low libido or, the things going on with arousal, what would be like, how would you go
Yeah,
from
so
there?
I really try to, tell people you sort of have to view it like a pie chart, right? And in
Hmm.
that pie chart, there's many different components. Hardly ever when someone's struggling with these things. And again, struggle can mean many different levels, right? So when we're talking about like the average struggle, right? It means that someone is needing to put, which is the regular average experience, someone has to put effort into this, right? I want to like, say that it's a myth, right?
Which
That
by
people,
the way, could we normalize it for a second? Like, I
yeah,
feel like
yeah,
with some of these
yeah.
things have to be super easy all the time, and it's normal, especially in relationships, and things come up, and we work things through, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, just had to
Yeah,
say
no, but I think that
that.
this is a topic, right? That people are like, everyone else, it just comes for.
Everyone
Everyone
has
else,
it
it
easy,
just
right?
flows. And it's just like, they're always in the mood, right? And it is an area, obviously, it's being thrown, right? That like,
Hmm.
it is an area that no one's talking to others about, which we
Right.
understand that, right? And for the
Hmm.
most part, right? For the most part, they're not really sharing in the same
Right.
way, right? Like, as I tell people, like with parenting, very often you'll be like, okay, right? Like I know, that other people
You're
struggle
together in the
too, and
struggle, exactly. It
right,
makes
you
it a
can
little
talk
easier.
about it, you feel less
Yeah.
shame around it, right? But this is
Hmm.
an area people feel very isolated, and they really don't know. I get away from the word normal, but what's average, right, for people to experience? So we want to say the average woman, right, especially as life goes on and things get busier, Mitzvah Shem, right, that like they are needing to put effort into cultivating desire, right? It's not something that just comes, and we could talk about that and how to work on that, but it's something that takes time. So the right, the average person who comes into me, there are things in their pie chart, right? It doesn't have to be terrible things that are going on, right? It could be some of it is just regular life, right? Everyday stressors, everyday things, right? Some of it could be your relationship has some struggles, right? Some of it could be health-wise are going through something, mental health, right, struggles, right? Like so many different things that sometimes people will say, like, how is it possible to even have desire after you go through all of that, right? But it is possible. It's just you sort of have to view it differently, right? It's not gonna just come, it's not gonna just be like the movies where you just, fall, it all falls into place, right? And it's just like so easily accessed, right?
Yeah, that's another problem. It's like we're sold this fantasy tale of like, this is
Yeah.
what it is. And it's
Yeah,
really not. It's not real
yeah,
life.
yeah.
Exactly.
It's really right. It's not that simple, right? And it's something that could be worked on, right? It's not that it's impossible, right? But when we understand that, like, the average person is putting in a certain amount of work into this, and we see that pie chart, and then another piece, our hormones, right? And I always say, like, grown women are hardly ever in the state of no hormones, right? Unless they're right, let's say their birth control doesn't have hormones, right?
Hmm.
But for the most part, whether, like you say, there's cycles, right? And for the most part, whether you're getting pregnant, trying to get pregnant, right? Nursing, life,
All those things will be
further on,
different, bring different
perimenopause,
things in the
menopause,
picture.
right? Like we're contending with hormones, right? Like, and
Right.
that's not a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of, right? That is part of your pie chart, right? Typically, right? As like, and just to
Yeah.
understand that there are many different factors that could be affecting this,
Yeah.
right? And for some people, there are bigger factors, some people there are smaller factors, and obviously. We try to see like what are all the pieces there that need to be worked on, not to make it perfect, but to understand like the components that are going into the struggle that's going on.
Exactly. I'm guessing a big part of that pie chart is going to be safety.
Yeah. Yeah. Safety and no pressure.
Right.
Very, very low pressure, you want to say, right? That's probably one of the biggest things that come up, right? And
Hmm.
obviously feeling emotionally and physically safe. And sometimes people, take that word too strongly. Like,
Hmm.
of course I know I'm safe, right? But like you have to feel safe, right? And probably the thing that comes up mostly around that, if that's what you're referring to, but a lot of times is the pressure around it.
Yeah.
That so
So,
many
so
women
actually,
feel.
the reason I brought up safety it is so multifaceted, and I actually don't see it as separate than hormones, even though it might be two separate things on the pie chart. Because hormones are foundational. Safety is foundational to hormonal health as well, to cycles and to everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And desire, really, like what I'm saying, desire is one aspect of like there's hormonal function to it, right? Our hormones are at play here of
Mhm.
being in the
Mhm.
mood, and arousal is also facilitated by hormones, all those things. And
100%.
hormones thrive on safety. Like that's a basic biological fact. Hormones thrive
Yeah.
on safety. Like I always say this with
Yeah.
ovulation. If someone has like delayed ovulation or they're not ovulating or having a normal cycle, it's always like what's not feeling safe in your body because your
Yeah.
body wants to do these functions. These are natural hormonal functions, but safety is a big foundation to it because think
Yeah.
about it. Your hormones, again, going back to this, your hormones want to make a baby biologically, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you can't make a baby if you're not safe. Like we're not bringing a baby into an unsafe environment. So I'm just bringing it back to biological perspectives, even though it's like, okay, come on, I'm not in the stage now, or I'm on birth control, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's biologically, it all works from that foundational perspective. Like remember, your
Yeah.
body is basically a child. It's like, okay, it's thinking very basic of survival and safety and scanning the environment. And that's literally what we're doing every time because even though intimacy and sexuality has been separated from fertility and pregnancy and conception, biologically it's not. So
Yeah.
your body's always scanning. Wait, is it safe? Is it safe now? Is it safe now? Is it safe now? Right?
Right. And some people, obviously more than others, will be doing that based on, from a mental health perspective,
Yeah.
right? Had any sort of, people sometimes think of trauma, right, as like big
Yeah.
T trauma, like
Hmm.
horrible, situations. I have many, many people that I work with.
Especially when it's sexual trauma, it's like even
Oh,
so much more.
that for
Yeah.
sure. Right, right, 100%, right? But even, I have many, many clients that will struggle sexually that have
Hmm.
not had big T trauma. They might have
Right.
had, typical childhoods, things that weren't keeping them right as safe as they needed to be. Sometimes it's homes where there wasn't enough affection and touch and just like the basics weren't there. But again, they're not like horrible, terrible stories, right? And I have
Right.
a lot of clients, and I just go back to, I very much believe the body keeps the score and
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
body will speak for us,
Hmm.
right? Like your body will speak for you. A lot of people, let's say, experience like sexual pain when it comes to like, let's say, tightening up, right? Because there's something in their body that's saying, this doesn't feel right. Something's off here, right? And being able to figure out what that is can really help them to figure out what's going on for them, right?
Yeah. Something that's come to mind, or as you're saying it, also, I feel like so often people can get stuck in this trap of, okay, something is here, my body's telling me something, let's figure it out, versus becoming also very like, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out. It's such a big thing, and like they feel it almost like counters the whole point because then they have even more pressure and stress around the pressure and stress and the
Yeah.
decreasing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like, how do we find the
We call
balance?
that, yeah, we call that spectatoring, right?
Yeah.
Basically, where for women, for men too, but I think for even more
Yeah.
so for as women, right? Like our
Hmm.
mind body connection is huge, right? And people get very often when people are coming in, right? They do get very focused sometimes on like the biological part of it. Like there must be something wrong with me biologically or hormonally, right? Like I've had
Or
hardly any
even
people.
emotionally, like what childhood trauma is coming up there, and they start like
Right,
analyzing everything very
but they
deeply.
don't realize sometimes, like, yeah, sometimes, and I understand it, right? It's
Hmm.
like, don't think of the pink elephant in the room, they're gonna think of the pink elephant in the room kind of thing, right? But the reality is that, yeah, when someone's struggling and they're not having the response they want to have, right? It makes sense. They're getting into bed and then they're like, what's going on? Why is it not working? Is this working? Right? They're evaluating, they're spectating, they're in their heads, which automatically is like a catch-22 because they're probably not going to have desire or arousal when they're in their heads and not in their bodies, right? So yes, the calmer your body feels, the more in the moment, the more present it is, and allowing to recognize, okay, distracting things will come up. That's normal, right? People all the time will have that. You don't have to be like perfectly zen to be able to do this, right? But to recognize when you are struggling, like, yeah, outside of the moment, what might be going on for me, right? Like where does either it not feel safe or it feels like I'm stressed in some sort of way around this, right? Like, and again, not just around intimacy, but around, life in general, because it's
Right.
all
Like all
connected.
the million things she has to take care of throughout the day, and it's like it doesn't
The
shut
mental
down.
load, right? That's what we call it, right?
Exactly.
We all carry a
Exactly.
pretty big mental load. So it's hard. It's hard, right? And again, that's the work, right? It's like that's the energy that we need to put into it, right? And it's not that there's something wrong with you when you need to do that. That's like the typical average woman needs to put in a certain amount of that energy to be able to work on leaving the mental load a bit, outside the room kind of thing, right? And be able to get present with themselves and connected to themselves to be able to then be able to come forward, right? And I think that's a big deal. I think especially for growing up from, right, of like connecting to that part of yourself, right? It's not really something we cultivate, right, growing up,
Right.
right? And it's something that most people, until they get married, they don't even know what I would refer to as like the sexual part of themselves, right? Or the
Hmm.
intimate part of themselves. And it actually takes work and time to be able to develop that, right? And it's almost like you are sort of starting from a younger age when you're developing that, even though you might be 21 or 22 or even older getting married, right? And most women
Yeah.
don't access that or know about that part of themselves really until they get married.
And also remember, we're like in our community, we get married really young, so we're kind of growing up at the same time as we're also navigating marriage and
Yeah.
relationship. And also like the fact that the brain doesn't develop fully until you're 25.
Yeah.
So like if you're
Yeah.
married before
Yeah.
then, it's like, okay, but you're literally growing up together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's tricky, right? And this is an area that, again, right? Like most people need that guidance and they don't always have that, right? To be able to really navigate all of that, plus all the hormones and everything that's going on. And you throw in getting pregnant early, right? There's so many different pieces, right? That like, that's why I tell people by the time they're usually coming for help, there's usually like
There's so
a
much.
bunch of pieces that need to be worked on, right? Because they, and again, and I understand it, like they don't really even know, oh, like I'm supposed to be feeling more here. Sometimes they don't even have the education, right?
Right, right. And it does bring me back a little bit to like let's say my work with the cycles and even Taharat Mishpacha. It's, some people don't have this perspective about this, but that's why I teach it in my courses how the cycle really holds both the development of self and development of the relationship, right? We have times in the cycle when we're more inward, we have times in the cycle when we're more outward. If you literally follow the Taharat Mishpacha process, we have the Nida aspect is more focused on yourself. You're not in a relationship
Mhm.
in that sense right
Mhm.
now. And then you have the mikvah as the reunion. So there's obviously so many layers to this and so much, we work with that. We know
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
involved around
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But it's on a basic level, if you could remove for a second all the layers and complications around it, if you can just see basically what it is, it's relationship to self, relationship to other, and we navigate back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because it's never complete. And it's always being one is affected by the other. Like how you relate to yourself is going to affect how you relate to your spouse. How you relate to your spouse is going to impact how you relate to yourself, and it's a
yeah.
constant cycling.
Yeah, I mean, it could become a vicious cycle in a positive way or a negative way, right? Like in some
Hopefully, it's
ways,
a
right?
healing cycle,
Hopefully,
right?
exactly, it's positive, 100%, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah, I think that most people need that time, right, to really, and that's why when people are coming, they're struggling with desire,
yeah,
it's like, do you even feel that yourself, right? Forget about
yeah,
like, with your spouse, right? Can you connect to that yourself? And a lot of people have a really hard time with that, right? Because it's just like,
exactly.
again, like they don't even know this part of themselves, right? It's like, how in the world do we access that and work on that? And yeah, like I say, I guess there's built-in time to try to do that, but then also people want to work on the like from a couple's perspective. It's also like that's also built in time to work on other aspects of the relationship,
Right.
right?
Right.
A
Yeah.
lot. It could be a lot, right? All at once happening,
It is a lot at once,
right?
which is, I think we should remind everyone, hey, we do have a lifetime for this work. Like,
Right,
chill a
right,
little
right,
bit.
right,
Yeah.
100%. And that's where, like, I always tell people, right, like, there's different stages of life. Obviously, the stage of trying to have children, having children, child rearing
It's
is
very
a very
full,
long
very
stage,
busy.
right?
Yeah.
But it actually, most people, just again, and culturally, don't have that much time to cultivate their relationship before
Right.
they jump into that stage, right? And especially their sexual relationship, right? It's not, they
Exactly.
don't have a chance to build that up and work on that. So they don't even often have like a baseline to work off of, like, oh, we had this. And then as we, right, sort of went into busier parts of life, they don't even have that baseline always, right? But I always say, like, that is one of the harder stages, right? In terms of just like the toll that's taken on you and your desire. It still could be worked with. It still can be something that is possible to get to and something that you have to view a little differently. I don't know if you ever came across like the literature around spontaneous desire versus responsive desire. I'm going to explain it
Let's
just because I
talk
think
about
it's
that a
really
little bit. Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we hold up to the standard of like everyone wants to have spontaneous desire, right? Which is really what we refer to as being in the mood,
It's
right? Like
instant
it's
gratification generation.
yeah, yeah. It's like if you're going to be doing something, right? If you're going to be going to a wedding tonight, right? You want to be like excited to go. You don't feel
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I have to go tonight. And I have so much to do before I go. And then I have to get out and I have to get dressed. I have to put my sheetal back on, right? Like, it's like you want to feel like, okay, I'm excited to go out and go be, right? Like at this wedding, right? But then, like, very often, life is just very busy and a lot going on. You're not always excited to go to the wedding, right? Like, and
Right.
you still go, right? Because like you want to be there for your friend, right? But a lot of times what happens is that we hold up to the standard, like we want that spontaneous desire to be there for intimacy, which I totally get, right? Like you want to be in the mood, you want to be excited, you want to be looking forward to it. But there's a lot of research, especially for women, right? That they don't necessarily operate on spontaneous desire, but more what we refer to as responsive desire, right? Which is really what that means is that there has to be a willingness to get started. So we're not talking to people who are like dreading it, averse to it, they're like really negative about it. We're talking to the average person who's like somewhat power about it, right? They're like,
Mhm.
okay, I'd rather sort of go read my book than get into bed to go
Right. You
have
need
sex,
that seed to
right?
get started.
Right, but they need some sort of stimuli to be
Hmm.
able to have a responsive desire, right? Which desire will come. You'll get more in the mood, but you might need arousal to start first or some sort of other stimulus, right? To be able to get something started. So maybe your body will feel something, right? Something has to sort of buy you into it, but you're going to get started and then you'll be like excited to continue. And it doesn't have to take that long, right? But a lot of women work that way, especially in like the early stages of life, right? Where like of married life, right? Where you're really like juggling so much and people are feeling tired and exhausted and mentally overworked and all of that and they are not feeling this like energy, right, to just like jump into it and
And
go.
it's also
But
pretty new. Like they're still learning a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, and they're
Right.
not connected to themselves in that way, and there's many
Yeah.
different factors, right?
Hmm.
And the more that they can learn, that they can access it in this way, the more they can start to feel like, okay, this works too, right? And it doesn't mean it will always be like that, or every time it will be like that, but when they open their minds to this idea of like, tell them, ask yourselves the question of, am I open to getting there versus am I there yet? Right? Am I in the mood? Am I
Love
open
that.
to getting into the
So it
mood?
takes the
Right?
pressure off. Like this is so feminine, by the way, because we're not about the result of getting there. It's more
And
like it takes that pressure off, and it's just like, okay, right now in the present moment, where am I, and where am I going, and letting yourself
And do
get
you have
excited.
that openness, right? And then
Yeah.
if you're not having that openness, you could try to figure out why. But a lot of people are like, I'm open to it, I'm just not feeling it yet, right? And when they actually can practice and see, like, oh, it really works very well also the other way, then
Hmm.
it's sort of like a trick, right? That helps them to be able to have willingness to do it and, be able to sort of work with that openness, which can totally get them there. And it's so much more important always how you're feeling afterwards versus how you felt beforehand, right? So again, I'm not talking about cases or situations where there's like a lot of dread or negative feelings around it. That's like a different thing that someone might need
Right. By the way,
help
disclaimer:
for.
this talk we're talking about regular,
The
average
average,
situations. Yeah.
exactly, exactly, right? So that exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So it's really about like people who are more neutral, power, okay, I could try kind of a place, right? If that's the case, right, then at the end of the day, we want to look at afterwards. How did you feel afterwards? What was your
Was
experience
it
like?
worth it?
Yeah, looking back at it, most people, right, will say like, "Oh wow, I really, really enjoyed myself. That was really connecting. I'm really
Hmm.
happy that I got started." Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But beforehand, they might have been a little more neutral about it, right? So when they see that that works, then they start to be able to utilize that as a way of like accessing it.
Right. And building from, so we were talking a lot about knowing yourself, knowing what works for you, like really being connected to yourself is so much a prerequisite for desire, arousal, intimacy, all that. But then, the next step of that, and especially, and being in a relationship is like, this is so important. I want us to talk about this is communicating,
Yeah.
because we might, first of all, so many people don't even know what they want. So it's like, okay, how are you communicating with your spouse? What would work for you, what would help you have more desire, more arousal, more, be more in the mood if you don't even know yourself. So that's of course the first step, really know yourself. And then communicating of, like this is why I'm so stressed. This is why I don't feel ready. This is why I can't
Yeah.
relax. And
Yeah.
brainstorming ways that, he can support you in different ways, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I think that, sometimes I tell like couples to utilize the framework or the conversation around what I would call like brakes and accelerators,
Right.
right? So it's like if anyone drives a car, they know that if your foot is on the brake and you try to press on the accelerator, your car definitely will not move. You may even break your car, right, by doing that, right? A lot of times people try to accelerate in conversations, like, let's try to do this extra thing. Let's try to add this in. Let's try, right? And most of the time, when someone is having a hard time with desire, it doesn't usually work so well, right? Because their foot is on the brake for some reason, right? Or multiple reasons, right? It could be as simple as the baby's in the room. I'm afraid that she's going to start crying if we get started, right? Like it could be simple things, right?
It's
But I tell
actually
people to
safety. Literally, when you put you break your foot on
exactly,
the brake in a
right?
car, you're doing it for safety.
Exactly, right? So it's sort of like that checking in and knowing, right? Like what's
Mhm.
keeping my foot on the brake, right? And having a conversation that way sometimes takes like some of the charge out of it. Like it's not so personal. It's not something that, right, we are like, blaming the other one for. We're just like talking out the reality of it. I think a lot of women like what stops them from communicating is like, I'm gonna make him feel bad, I'm gonna hurt him, I'm going to, right, ruin the moment kind of a thing. And I always tell people, right, like what connection brings by talking about it can do so much for your desire and your arousal, right? More than maybe anything else, as opposed to pretending, right? Like,
Right.
no, I'm totally here. I'm in the mood and I'm
Totally
excited,
fine.
right?
Yeah.
Like everything's great and wonderful. And so many women will pretend. And it's like if you're just real about it and and as a couple, they can recognize that there's nothing wrong with either of them, right? But they're different, we're made differently, right? We're hormonally
Exactly.
different, right? And we recognize that like we can just work with that reality, then everything feels like it works that much better, right? So that communication, like before and during and after and all the time, right? Healthy couples talk about sex all of the time, right? And like they check in, and especially as life changes, and especially as we go through different hormonal changes, and whether we're on birth control now, or we're pregnant, or we're nursing, or we're not, right? Or we're just trying to have a baby. There's so many different places and stages, right, that we go through, or beyond that, aging and menopause, and right, like that the conversation needs to continue to happen. Like as often there's really nothing wrong with making it more often than not, right? Like,
Yeah.
and checking in with like, yeah, now that you're in a different stage or you're just in a different part of your cycle, like so many different times, how can we tweak what's going on here, right? And I think that
Talking about intimacy is part of intimacy. It literally builds the
100%,
relationship.
100%, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we can talk about this in a way that feels safe, right, and comfortable,
Hmm.
and in a way that we look at it as like, okay, like we're in this together,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
couples really get stuck with this because they feel like, again, I go back to like the movies, like no one needs to talk about this. Like who
Hmm.
talks about these things, right? Like, right? Like you shouldn't have to, but it's actually like the opposite, right? Like a healthy couples talk about it all the time and keep having those check-ins because it just it fluctuates, right? Throughout the life cycle, it fluctuates, right? And that's something that we just need to be aware of. And if we realize that that's part of the average experience, and we're more open to it, like, oh, okay, of course we have to talk about this because something shifted, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very fundamental. Just, I mean, it's obvious men and women are different. We know that. But somehow in a relationship, we compare, like, oh, a man works like this, a woman works like this. And because it's just the two of us, right? It's like, okay, so maybe something's wrong with me, or why, why am I not, why is it not matching up? Why is it not like, all those things. So
100%. No, it makes sense. There ends up being like this feeling of like, right, like, yeah, like if everyone else can do this, right? And a lot of times, again, most husbands don't know any better, right? That like what's going on in other people's lives, right? And they're like, right, like there's something off here, but it doesn't very often, there's not necessarily something off, right? It's just part and parcel of everyday life, right? And everything else that's going on. And like I said, once a couple sees they can work with it, then it's like, oh, okay, we can accept this. We can work with this, right? Most of the time, because there's ups and downs, right? Like the people who are getting stuck is because they got stuck in a down because it's like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I? Right? For example, like let's say after having a baby, I once had a client come to me and they couldn't have an orgasm and they were like so distraught over it. And it was like, no, this is typical, right? That you're struggling with this, right? I sent them away, right? Because it was like, this is not a problem, right? And they were like so distraught about it. And I understand that it's upsetting, right? It's disappointing. When they understood it's just part of like the cycling, right? They were
So
able to
let's talk
like,
about that because that was a question that came up a lot about
okay,
postpartum, pregnancy, different life stages. I mean, we'll
yeah,
talk about perimenopause as well. These different life stages that come up where your hormones change, and
yeah,
with it, obviously, libido, arousal,
yeah,
desire, all that change. Whether for hormonal reasons or hello, after having a baby, like your mind is busy with so many other things. Like it's really it takes a back burner sometimes, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So how does
yeah.
that work?
Yeah. So it there's no, exact experience, right, that like everyone has, right? I tell people it's more like expect that this is going to the changes will impact your intimate life just like it impacts every other aspect of your life, right? Again, that's like the myth. It's like, oh, like intimacy just goes and flows no matter what else is going on, right? But it's not really the case. Again, this is an average experience. Everyone, there's anomalies, of course, and there's right, but I think that for the most part, most people find going into pregnancy. I tell most people there's probably going to be, a real like, effect on your intimate relationship,
Yeah,
right? Like if you think about just like the, time period, right? And obviously the hormones that are there and everything that's going on, right? Like usually just the not feeling well. And even in the breast pregnancies, just every day, something will come up, right? And like something's going on. And, that's usually the first, trimester is usually most difficult for people. Most people find like the second trimester, they can sort of get back to themselves. Like people will even see a fluctuation in like desire. Some people like an increase. A lot of times people that's a myth and people are like, what's wrong with me? I'm not having that. A lot of people don't experience that, but they're like feeling a bit better so they can access, just the ability to get there more, right? I think usually like the third trimester, people are just feeling blah and big and uncomfortable, right? So it's
right.
like pregnancy has a real effect on this. You're gonna see a dip probably in your intimate life. I think it's especially hard for people who don't have again, start like get married really fast, get pregnant kind of thing. Like I think that's really hard for
You
people.
didn't have
They
so
don't
much
have,
time before,
they have
exactly.
like no idea what's even right expect or what's really normal for them, right? Like
Hmm.
so that's really hard. The postpartum period, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, just I think it's different on your body. I think some people feel like their body's, somewhat back to themselves, but they're gonna feel like obviously caring for a newborn, right? And like I think also having very different experiences from your husband with that, right? Where it's like you're just so invested, you're up at night, all these different things, right? You're nursing if you are, or you're taking care of the baby, right? It's something that a lot of people find like also they tend to be more dry during if they are breastfeeding.
right.
They tend to have more
So
dryness,
that's also the
but
physical arousal mechanism is very much affected by
A
that, right?
hundred percent, a
Yeah.
hundred percent, right? And like, and again, if you're having discomfort, right? If you're having a hard time, it all affects desire. Like,
Hmm.
you're not going to be, so open to
Like it's
doing
harder to work
something.
for.
Yeah, yeah. It takes that much energy. It's hard. It's really hard. Like, I want to validate that, right? Like, it's just really
Yeah,
hard to keep putting in as you're going through all of that, right? And then like that lasts for, some time until what? Until people are then either on birth control, right? Like which we can talk about, right? Obviously affects things, right? And it's like, so
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's less about like looking at it like doom and gloom, like, oh my gosh, it's never gonna come. It's like, let's work with all of this, right? And if you're, and I think very much as a couple, when you're seeing that and your husband understands that, like you're not trying to not have desire now, right? Like your body is just it's putting its energy to other places, right? And like you have and again, it is workable. It doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means have different expectations around it.
yeah, exactly. I want to talk about birth control, and I see also more questions coming in. But first, just to
Okay.
finish this thought, I think for it's like just an easy thing to remember hormonally, biologically, like that can help you understand, which phases, which parts of your life can be different and changed by this. Basically, coming back to the physical aspect of what like I know we separated we in our world we separated fertility from sexuality, but if you really think about it, it's hormonally the same story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anytime your body is not in fertility mode, when you're
Right.
breastfeeding or pregnant or coming towards menopause and different stages like that, or on birth control, whatever it is, the body gets the message, oh, this is not our right. Like remember,
Yeah.
estrogen is
Yeah.
the hormone that wants to make baby, wants to get you in the mood, wants to make it happen. And then other phases, again, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have desire, doesn't mean you're not going to have arousal. It's just understanding hormonally where you're at. So you know your baseline, you know what you're working with, you know where you're at. Because look, you just did make a baby, and your baby needs you now, and
Right.
your body is not here to, obviously, nursing works differently for different people, but like biologically, your body wants you to focus on this baby right now, and it might not be prioritizing desire and sexuality right now. Of course, this is something you want to cultivate in your life, and you have. So that brings me to the first question of, but hold on, I just want to finish this thought, and then this is also really interesting, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Because post menopause, if you would say, "Oh, it's all about fertility," then
Right.
you're gone by 50. No, because people
Mhm.
actually have a second spring. It's most menopause is called a second
Okay.
spring, where you literally
Okay.
have a rebirth in a whole new way, and you experience sexuality in an entirely different way. Obviously, I did not experience that yet. I don't think you did either, but from professional experience, you want to
Right.
talk about that as
Right.
well?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's something that, right, people sometimes think as you age, it's just like, yeah, this goes out the window,
No, you
right?
don't
No,
wither.
no.
You are reborn, right?
Right, exactly. It's not there, right? There are different challenges for sure at that
Mhm.
time period, right? Which can definitely, but people don't have to worry as much about, right? Like getting pregnant, not getting pregnant, birth control, fertility, right? They don't, that
Yeah.
whole piece is like they're able to sort of, feel a little more relieved from that, right? And I think
Hmm.
that opens up a whole, like accessing a whole place inside yourself, talk
Yeah.
about safety and feeling calm and all of that, right? And also like many people have very vibrant sex lives. I think it's about, again, adjusting expectations, right? So like, let's say, right, as estrogen drops, right, people have more vaginal dryness, they can have, right, more irritation. There are definitely creams out there and things that people can try to do for that, right? But like, it's not like it's over, right? It's then maybe adjusting, right? Like adjusting to that new way, right? And trying to figure out a way that you can have intimacy, be intimate. Men have other, right, physical issues that can come up,
Hmm.
right? Like it's like more like, can we just adjust to this time period? It's not about sex now goes out the window. Intimacy doesn't exist
Right.
anymore, right?
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
something, it's really about the perspective of like, can we go along with the waves, right, and adjust to them? And I think that it's something that does get hard for couples, right? Because again, men are not as much going through those waves in that way, right? It's something
Right.
that at
So
the end
they,
of
but
the
they do
day,
decline with age. So they don't have the cyclical rhythm we have through every cycle, but then
right,
they have
right.
testosterone does
Yeah,
go
goes
down as they get
down.
older.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. But men are still interested as they get older, right? It's not
Yeah,
like,
of course.
right, exactly, right. It doesn't
But just
stop, right?
knowing what's at play,
Yeah,
again, like what's
exactly,
the
exactly,
baseline? Yeah.
exactly, right? And couples definitely need help to be able to really navigate this, right? Right. Sometimes again, that comes back to the discrepancy. When the discrepancy is larger, when, and again, we're talking about stereotypical average experiences. There are many men who are the low desire spouse too. I'm not saying that that's definitely out there, right?
I want to address that because
Yeah,
many
yeah,
times people have the flipped experience and they don't feel validated. They feel like,
yeah,
wait,
yeah,
they're the one that does have more
yeah,
desire, and
yeah.
they don't feel seen because all the conversations are about women having less
Yeah,
desire, men having more desire, but it's actually such a valid
yeah.
experience as well. People
I
really,
do, yeah, and I think the trickier part of that, right, is that again we
mhm.
we stereotypically believe it should be the other way, right?
There you go with
And
stereotypes.
right,
Exactly.
exactly, right. And I'm not gonna say that, right, the average person, the average couple I'm dealing with, definitely the woman is
Hmm.
typically the more lower desire, but
Right.
there's definitely plenty of couples that it's the other way around. I do believe there's a dynamic that comes
Yeah.
along with it. I do
Yeah.
very much believe that it's not that every high desire woman married a low desire man, right? I do believe there's like dynamics that go on around this that you feed off of each other in a certain way too. But if
Hmm.
we're talking about again the relative terms, low desire, high desire, it definitely can exist the other way very often as well, right? So, and
Yeah.
that is especially I think hard for women who feel like, what's like, am I not attractive enough? Why is he not into me? All men just want to have sex, right? So it must just be something's wrong with me, and that's not the case either. Low desire can hit men just as much. They have brains too. Their brain can get in the way, right? All of that, hormones, all of
Different life
it, right?
situations can be at play as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 'cause I want to get to questions about, like, again, I want to
Sure.
talk more about the discrepancy, how to navigate that, and there are different questions coming in, but we can't have this conversation without addressing the birth control piece very quickly,
Yeah, yeah.
because I mentioned all the way in the beginning how our hormones play into libido and desire and
Yeah,
arousal, and all these
yeah,
things are very much impacted by hormones. So when we take a pill or a medication or an IUD that directly impacts these hormones, I don't think it's rocket science to figure out that our libido will be impacted by that. And many,
yeah,
many people are aware of that and see that personally or just, in general,
yeah,
there's more conversations that we're having around this already today. So
Right. This is why I tell people around it, right? I feel
yeah,
like for sure, right? The birth control is no question about it. A lot of people will switch or get off or change, and they realize right, that libido, that drive will come back more when they're and arousal is easier to access when they're
yeah.
not on the hormonal birth control.
They're getting themselves to a new baseline, and then
Right.
you have the whole pie chart that you address as well.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But I also find people get very stuck. Like if your birth control is working for you in all other ways, which is not right, always so common, right?
Hmm.
Then I would say like, people get very stuck sometimes, like I have to switch, I have to change, they get all stressed about it, right? Like
Right.
it must be, it's not usually like the entire answer to the problem, right?
One piece,
It's something
right.
like if you can tweak it, if you can work and seeing, am I able to, make that adjustment to see, can I, sort of do a litmus test to see it will help me? Great, right? If it's something that's like you're on something, you've tried everything, it's not working for you, don't get stuck on it, right? It's like it's the only thing you can do about it, right? Like there's many other things you can do. Unfortunately, we're probably not gonna have enough time to get to all those things, right? But like, and that's, I want to just quickly say, right, I think like, utilizing the accessing the responsive spontaneous desire is a big thing, but I think also like connecting to this part of yourself, right, in terms of trying to think about like your own. I really try to tell people to go back to like their own parenting around this, right? And like, you know, going back all the way, right? Because many times people check in with like how they feel about themselves inside.
Yeah.
It's like they sort of are like a 13-year-old or 14-year-old that's like, right, having that response to it, like, oh, that's so interesting, right? Like, if they don't have negative feelings about it, like they haven't really, again, developed properly around this. And sometimes being able to like really check in with how do you feel about intimacy? Are you really connected to it? It's something you just learned and you're like, okay, it makes sense, right? But like you have to connect to your own sexuality to really be
Right.
able to get to that place, you
Right.
know? So like it takes work, right? But it's something that can be accessed.
Right. So, like, if you're feeling yourself blocked in this area and you're on birth control, like, don't ignore that. Like, that could be
Right,
playing a big
right,
piece. And,
right.
and we
And then
do
maybe
see, we do see like people feel an amazing shift after. And then, like you said, sometimes you have people who come back and okay, I got off. I still have
right,
things to work on, right? Because it's a piece of the puzzle.
another piece of
But it's important to know, like, if you understand how your hormones
right, that
work,
it could definitely
like,
be
that's
a
definitely a big
factor.
piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, someone's asking just for practical examples, can you give examples of how to get aroused in general? Right, so a little back to basics. You said sometimes you're not in the mood, but once you're aroused, then you are. Can you share specific examples?
Right. So, I think for the purpose of this right, podcast, we're not gonna get into all the ways
Just
to get it right. But
briefly, yeah.
yeah, but I think it's like, again, getting aroused in general basically goes back to, your body is created, right, in a way where there are more sensitive parts of your body, right? Like your breasts, your genitals are parts of your body, right, that are more likely, they're more erogenous zones, not the only places, right? You can definitely look it up and see like there's many different parts of your body,
There's a
right?
book I could recommend it. Again, it has some. It's not like fully kosher in the beginning, so like use your discretion. It's called Women's Anatomy of Arousal, and if
Okay.
you can get past that beginning and just look at the
Right.
anatomy part, it really explains so well how
Yeah.
arousal works.
Yeah, but I think
Really.
what's important for people to realize, what's more important to say, I think is that like people sometimes jump too fast, right, to the
Right.
sexual parts of the body and don't give themselves enough time to like
Right. You
refer
just
to
want
it
to be
more
in the
in the
body in
up,
general. Right.
right? And that also might speak to different how men and women work, right? And like trying
Hmm.
to recognize like you need that time to build up arousal. Arousal is like a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is I feel nothing, 10 is I have an orgasm, right? Like, and if you can really look at it, like you need that 0 to 3, 4, right? Like of just like time, non-sexual touch, right? Just trying to just like be there, let your body warm up. It doesn't have to take so much time, but it can take, a little bit of time.
Right.
And if you skip that whole piece and just sort of jump into like arousal or trying to get aroused, you probably won't get there.
I think we
That's
should
really
just say a
important.
woman's full body is erogenous.
Also taking out the garbages, right? But yeah. Right? So I
Exactly.
heard someone once say like foreplay starts in the morning, wake up in the morning, right?
Exactly.
Like it's not,
100%.
it's
Again, like
not
taking
just
all of
that.
that mental load, those stresses, right? That's
Yeah,
where communication
yeah,
comes in, like what
yeah,
really helps you relax more.
yes, yes.
Exactly. Okay, how do we view times that we go into it, but then it's uncomfortable and isn't so enjoyable? How do we view that after?
So I think it depends on, I always say, whenever we're talking about, something being a problem, right? We look at like frequency, intensity, duration, right? Like how
Yeah.
often is that happening? Is that a pattern? Is that something that you're having negative feelings about, right? Like you want to try to, it's not about like putting a positive spin on it. I'm not like that, right? It's more about like really think about like if this is something that's happening more often than not, you want to start to think about, what might be going on for you, right? And like it's something that here and there, right? You can have experiences that are like, hey, it wasn't as good as other times, right? There's that, it's not always going to be amazing, right? It's not about that. You should be feeling calm, positive, connected afterwards, right? Like,
I think I want to just repeat what you just said because I think it's so important to highlight. I think we have this pressure every single time has to feel
Yeah.
amazing. And if not, there's a problem,
Yeah.
there's something wrong. Like, let the flow of
Right.
life be.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes
Right. You
are
might
more,
have more in your head that night and there's more
exactly.
going on. You're more tired, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I very much encourage again couples to talk about that, right? Like, right, like it was harder for me tonight, right? Or even in the moment, like I'm not feeling like I'm getting there, and couples can work together and adjust to that,
Right.
right? And not have the expectation. But if again, if it's ongoingly like that and
Right.
more times
Then,
than
yeah,
not, then you want to look at like what might be going on for
exactly.
you.
Okay. What would be ways during menopause to explore differently than premenopause? Is there like a difference perimenopause to after menopause? What would
Well,
you say?
menopause, right? I mean, obviously, it's like is a time period, right? Perimenopause usually is much longer,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
like perimenopause, I think that people will find there's more fluctuation because
Right.
our hormones are still right, like trying to figure
Very much
themselves out,
fluctuating. Yeah.
right? Right. So I think they'll find like more varied experiences, right? And maybe
Mhm.
during menopause itself, they're finding like more like, okay, they're really, might be, feeling like the
It
same.
also might be a really much busier time in life for a lot of women, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, for sure. Just in the bigger context, right? So I
Yeah.
think that, I don't know that I have a particular way, but I think it's sort of trying to look out for, okay, like your general changes, what's going on for you emotionally, physically, mentally, right? All of that. And to be able to, think about, more of what you need. And like, I can't stress enough, like the conversations around that, right? And letting your husband know, like, what you're going through, what your body's going through, what you're experiencing, right? And it's the same thing with perimenopause, but again, because it's so much longer, I think it's harder to like pinpoint what's going on.
Right. Right.
Right. Of course, menopause, where it's like you're more aware of like, hey, this is different. That's different, right?
Right.
Like
It's like
going,
more settled. It's more final. Like you're in that
yeah,
stage. Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
yes, right.
I'm skipping some of the questions because some of them were already addressed.
Yeah,
There's
in
a
the
lot of
interest of
questions coming
time.
in and we're tight on
I'm
time.
happy to put in the chat at the end, like my email, my phone number,
Yeah, yeah,
anytime you want
absolutely.
to reach
Yes.
out with a question,
We're
I'm
gonna say
happy
at
to
the end
be, yeah,
how you can take this further. Yeah.
yeah.
But just looking a few that are still popping up. So you're saying it's on the back burner, but how does that affect the marriage? I find it hard to build up emotional intimacy without the physical intimacy, kind of like the glue.
Right. So I really view it again as like a cycle, right? In terms of like a,
Hmm.
again, a positive cycle or a negative cycle kind of a thing, right? And we
And then
hope,
hold on. Here's where you see
yeah.
how everyone's so different. The next question is just the opposite. I find the opposite can be true. I find it hard to
Right.
enjoy physical intimacy alone if not proceeded with emotional. Everyone's so
Exactly.
different. Yeah.
Everyone's different. Exactly. And that's why I say it's like cyclical, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't, like I can't do couples work without doing, right, work on intimacy and intimacy, right? Because the emotional intimacy and physical intimacy go hand in hand, right?
Exactly.
And some people, it's really about just like which door do you go in to get started, right? So, some people need that emotional door to get started to get to the physical. Some people need the physical to get to the emotional. Like there's nothing wrong with you one way or another, right?
Right.
I think that it's something that like again, yeah, like it does have an impact on marriage, right? Like if you are struggling with this, whether it's because you need that emotional piece first or the physical piece first, right?
The way
It
I
does,
really see it, going back to self-intimacy versus intimacy in relationship, it was
yeah,
yourself. You also need connection to your body, connection to your emotions. So in a marriage, to sustain yourself, you need to be connected to your body. You can't just be
right,
emotional or
right,
mental all the time. In a marriage, the same thing. It can't just be sustained by having conversations. You need physical
right.
connection as well in both of these
Yeah,
places.
right. So it's sort of like, can I be open to trying, be
Yeah.
curious about both, right? Like, and again, I think physical is different than sexual, right? Like, a lot of times people, they might feel like, okay, like I have to jump again to like the very intimate part of it, right? And sometimes it's just like a very light touch, right? I think that people like forget about this, right? Like it's a non-right sexual touch, right? That
Mhm.
sometimes they're not open to getting all the way there. Their body's not there yet, but they might be more open to a little back rub, right? And it's like
Right.
that can get things started, right? Or the other way, they need like a schmooze or being in bed and just like talking about their days first, right? Or playing a game with each other because they haven't seen each other all day and they need that emotional part first, right? And it's like
Exactly. So
neither one is
really,
right or
just
wrong.
like when you know you figure out, you learn yourself, you're learning how you operate as a person, as
Right.
a couple. It's so individual. No two couples are alike.
Right.
You learn
You're
each other.
right. I always encourage
Yeah,
people to go back to their love languages if they never read that or you're not aware of
yeah,
that, right? Like, and they go,
definitely.
like I say,
Yeah,
you can't know.
I'll put some resources under the
Right.
recording of
Yeah.
like the different resources we
Yeah.
mentioned. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great one.
Yeah.
I want to read this comment because it's painful to read, but I think it's important that we hear because this is not you're not the only one that's the person that sent it is not the only one that's struggling with this. I was told as a Kala by her Kala teacher not to tell my husband if it hurts because it will make him feel really bad. Well, I stayed quiet, feeling courageous, and then struggled with fear, pain cycle, afraid of pain, not wanting, not wanting to do it, and feeling when
Pain due.
not being able to.
I'm
You want
feeling
to continue?
pain. I have it here. I'm feeling pain due to the fear. Communication is important. I don't think a college should be told to hold it in and stay quiet.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
can talk for a moment from the college teacher perspective, but I'm happy to.
Not, yeah, this is not what, not what I approve of as a college teacher. Absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything that, and we touched upon pressure, right? And like, especially, we could probably do a whole podcast on pain, right? Like, pain is something that it should not, no one should ever tell you, first of all, that should be part of your experience. Pain, sex is not meant
But
to be
speak to the part of
painful.
not telling your husband that you're in pain because you'll make him feel bad. I mean, you need communication. You need like he wants to
Yeah,
know
but
how you feel.
I've heard it many times before, unfortunately, too, where it's like, right, it's messaging around like, like
Just be
just go with the
quiet. Just
program, just do what you gotta do,
yeah.
right? Like, and at any stage in life, no matter what you're going through, and like we're trying to give obviously the very
Not
opposite
to
message,
mention
right?
that the if from a halachic perspective, from a Jewish perspective, intimacy is a husband's obligation for the woman.
Yeah,
Just putting it
yeah,
out there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that people get very stuck in this
Yeah.
and the pressure around it and the need to do what they have to do. And when they really like understand what it's all about and, the roles they're supposed to be in. And I promise you, I can tell you this, from like the majority, like 99% of the couples I see, husband does not want that, right? Like he mamish does not want
No.
they did not want their wives to be suffering, right? Like they want to be connected. You can't be connected if you're pretending and you're just, shutting yourself off, right? Your whole self has to be present, right? For the most part, in order to be able to enjoy it. Your own, like I said, your self, right? And then the self connected to your spouse, right? And if you need to shut down parts of yourself, then you won't be present. You won't be able to enjoy it. He won't be able to feel you there. You won't be able to feel him there. And the whole thing just is turns sour, right? And that's not the way it's meant to be.
Yeah, what I'm gonna say here is what's coming up is intimacy, the real meaning of it, and it's not just sex, but like that the connection, which is very much, the sexual connection is a big part of it. I mean, even the words intimacy, and
Yeah.
if you think about
Mhm.
the Torah's word for intimacy is das, knowing.
Right.
You
Right.
really want to know each other. How are you knowing each other when you're
Yeah.
shutting yourself down, when you're not communicating, you're not talking about it, you're not really being real. You want to
Yeah.
be yourself. Intimacy is this desire is this full aliveness of you're fully being yourself. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
I can't pick it up now, but I picked a card this morning from a card deck that I have. Something like change begins when you allow yourself to live as yourself, when you let yourself be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what we want. And in marriage, you want to be married to the person that you know, to the person that you, right? Not to a
Yeah.
stranger, not to someone you don't know. You want to really know each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. The ironic part is like, right, opening yourself up and talking about the struggles and the things you're going through. That's what allows that intimacy to come, which actually builds, right, a much healthier and stronger and connected life together, right? That's what lasts intimacy throughout the lifetime, through all the ups and downs, right? Is really
Right.
that connection, right? And the connection actually comes from like the ironic part is like sharing and even sharing the really hard parts, right? That feel like I can't tell him that, right? But like actually when you share and you let him in that way that's what brings the connection. That's what makes everything work that much better.
Right. And we're not going to get to all the questions, but just to
Yeah.
bring healing to this perspective, because it's not the only, it's not about the, I mean, it is about the pain, but it's more about this idea of being communicating and being together in it. Can you paint a best case scenario of, this woman was scared to share with her husband. Let's say
Yeah.
she would have. What might that have looked like? What might her husband have
Yeah.
responded? What would have a healthy relationship have looked like from there?
The husband would respond like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going through that. I never want to do that to you." Right? Right? Like we need to figure this out. Someone's having pain, there's a reason you're having pain, right? Intimacy is not meant to be painful, right? It's not like any doctor, anyone ever tells you, right? Just like
Right.
take a glass of wine and just like, it is what it is. No, 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 right? Like that is not what it's meant to be, right? So really in any good relationship, now, again, it gets tricky, right? If obviously, again, there's different needs and desires and wants in the relationship, and couples really, really have to work hard to navigate that together, right? But at the same time, right, and there's Rabbanim that can help with this. There's many different approaches. Like no one should be in pain, and any good spouse, right, which again, most of the time is what I see. It's like, no, no, we can't do that if you are in pain, right? We need to figure this out, and they will come for help. And very often, someone is in pain, they should start to get help for it.
Yeah.
Very often it's they start with the medical perspective just to check that everything anatomically is okay,
Yeah.
right? But after that, the mind can create a situation where your body is tightening up and pain is there, and you really want to try to figure out again why is that tightening up happening, right? Because for many different people, it could be many different things, right? But that's really important that it should never be painful, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry to everyone who sent in questions that we didn't get
Yeah.
to. You all sent in such great questions. I picked the ones that were the most like applicable to a general conversation, and
I'm gonna put
We,
in my chat. I'm gonna put in the
yeah,
chat now my email
well,
address and a number that you can text me to. I am very happy to be a resource to
yeah,
anyone that needs, right? I very much like to be there for women, right? In terms of just sometimes you have a question. If I can't answer a question, I'll tell you directly where to go to, right? But like I think there's not enough people out there who are a resource, right, for women that are struggling in any many different levels, right? And to be able to get the help that you need because Baruch Hashem, we live in a world now that there is help out there for many different professionals, right, that are helping in this arena. So, if you have a
yeah.
general question, I'm happy to answer you.
I'm gonna put the information in the recording as well, so you can reach out. You're accepting new patients now, new
Yeah,
clients.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can reach out to Pamela if you're looking for
Or
support in
even
this
just, or
area.
even just, I
Even
don't
just
believe
questions,
everyone
even
has
just
to be a
asking
client, right? So
questions.
that I'm happy to be
Yeah,
a resource,
yeah,
right? If
being a
someone has a
resource.
question that almost always when I do these workshops, I get just like I had no one to ask this to. I don't want
Yeah,
anyone to feel like they had no one to ever ask a question to, right? And sometimes
exactly.
it's just about hearing, oh, that's average, that's normal, it's okay, right? Like it'll pass, it will come, right? Like trying to just remember that, but like there are people out there that can help just answer a question, right? And I very
100%.
much, see
Yeah,
that as my role and what I do. So happy for
that's
anyone to reach
amazing.
out, to Tom, reach out.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have you as a resource.
Mhm.
And if you're looking also for more the perspective, let's say Taharas and Mishpacha, the cyclical perspective, how to understand yourself and your cycle and your femininity and your sexuality and everything related to that, my website is reclaimwomanhood.com. I have the embodied course is offered only once a year. We're deep in the middle of it. That's where we learn about the arousal anatomy and the cycle anatomy and all the different fun stuff that infertility awareness that's going to come next year. But meanwhile, we have things coming up around the cycle. We have redemptions coming up soon. You can hear more about it. And in the summer, I do secrets of Nida, like all the things about Taras and Shpacha that you never learned, about what it's really all about, and how it does build this intimacy, this communication, this relationship with yourself and with your spouse. So we have tools all over the place. We have Torah perspectives, we have psychological perspectives, we have different kinds of supports available to you. So we're really excited to have been able to do this with you, that you can have this conversation and you can all have resources because we really need
Yes.
this. So thank you, Pamela,
Thank
for
you.
doing this with me.
Thank you for
It's
having
so
me.
much fun.
Yes, yes. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.